Another upgrade of equipment to make my workflow even easier. In this video, I want to discuss why I just upgraded from the ATEM Mini, so this device, to the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. No, I did not choose the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. I actually chose the older model, the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. In this video, I want to give you an idea about how I actually ended up choosing the Mini last year. Then I'm also going to talk about why the Atomos Ninja V is part of this whole story, and now why and what was making it possible to switch to the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. Now, as always, I will have those chapter markers down here in the YouTube player and of course also in the description of the video so that you can jump around and look for the segments that might be most interesting for you. Starting out, I will talk about how I ended up with the Atomos Ninja V, what then compelled me to upgrade from that also to the Mini, and then now why I'm choosing the Pro ISO as another upgrade in this direction. Now, starting out, what led to even owning the Atomos Ninja V? If you have been following my channel for a while, there have been numerous upgrades in different parts of my equipment. One of those was a couple of years ago when I switched from Sony back to Canon. However, at that time, I didn't know that Sony would soon introduce cameras which don't have the 30-minute record time limit anymore, but Canon would still hold strong and keep that 30-minute limit up and running. This is true for the Canon EOS R, and at this point, I am now filming with two Canon EOS R cameras, one shooting overhead right there, and the other one is the one that I am speaking directly into. Now, the Canon EOS R is an overall great camera. It has great features and is overall a tremendous piece of equipment, especially when combined with nice RF Canon glass. However, that 30-minute record time limit is an absolute neck breaker. I have lost footage, more numbers than I can count, where simply the camera stopped recording and I didn't notice because I am so often in the situation where I am filming myself in front of the camera instead of actually being behind the camera. Now, the flippy screen is all nice and dandy. However, if you don't keep your eye on that little red dot in the corner, you might just miss the fact that the recording stopped. And for me, when I'm in my flow, that is really easy to happen. Now, at some point, I needed a solution for this problem. And at the time, the most affordable and reachable solution for that was to invest into the Atomos Ninja V. The Atomos Ninja V is essentially a high quality monitor which has features like, for example, waveforms, LUTs, as well as the quality of the monitor itself with its peak brightness, as well as HDR display capabilities. So it is an incredible, really good monitor. Additionally to that, however, it is also a recorder. And so you can slide a SSD into the back of the recorder and with that record internally on the Atomos Ninja V up to 4K. And I think this model actually can do up to 5.9K or 4K with 60 frames per second. And now it can even do ProRes RAW with certain cameras. And that brings many benefits to the video production. For one, you have really nice peaking features, waveforms, false color, and those kind of things. You have a really nice big camera monitor, which is not right in front of you when you have the flippy screen like that. You also can put this onto your camera because of course you can put it into the hot shoe of the camera. You can power it by battery. You can record for longer than 30 minutes, which was my big one. And another really big one that was important for me was that this recorder records ProRes files internally. Now, I've been using the Apple ecosystem for over 10 years at this point, and so this choice of a ProRes recorder, combining it with the hardware that I use to edit with, and that with the ease of editing of the ProRes, is actually a great combination because my Intel MacBook at the time would not necessarily like to handle different types of file formats, like for example the H.264, H.265 files, and of course also sometimes screen recordings that I do with my computer. Now with the ProRes recordings from the Atomos Ninja V, I was able to record longer than 30 minutes. I was able to edit much faster because my computer wasn't struggling as much, and overall it was a great addition to my equipment. However, what do you do once you add another camera? And that's what exactly happened. At that time, I invested into the second Canon EOS R to be able to shoot from different angles at the same time and then later on edit those things together. Now, one camera would be able to record into the Atomos Ninja V, and then I could edit those files very easily. I would not have to worry about the 30-minute record time limit or any of that. But way too many times I did not notice when the second camera stopped recording because of the 30-minute record time limit, and that became an issue. Mainly because it stopped me in my flow. And that means that if I don't catch the fact that the camera stopped recording, I would have to go back and record things another time. And nothing is worse than having to do a video multiple times when you have already done it successfully and you were happy and all of that. So I was looking for even a better solution. And with that, the ATEM Mini was the next investment. These devices didn't exist before, or at least not at this price point. But they were more and more getting popular at the time when I was again looking for a solution. There are 3 different models of this: the ATEM Mini, the ATEM Mini Pro, and the Pro ISO. All of them pretty much look exactly the same, which you can also see by the fact that the Pro ISO is basically the same device as the Mini, and it only has a few more buttons right here on the side. Now, what does this device do, and why was it an interesting investment for me? For the most part, it is all about these ports here in the back. There are 4 HDMI ports, which you can hook up, for example, to cameras or a computer monitor. There are also 2 3.5mm stereo input jacks, so you can actually hook up microphones. You have a HDMI video out port right there. You have a webcam out. You have ATEM control via a network connection, and you have a power plug. On the other side of the device, you have a bunch of buttons for different functionalities. Now, I'm not going to go into depth of all of the functionalities, but the main thing, and that is also the reason why I invested into this, is you can hook up 4 HDMI devices, like for example a screen and cameras, to this device, and then you can switch between them by pressing the buttons here on the device. And you can also then use that signal on the HDMI out and, for example, feed it into a Atomos Ninja V as your recorder, and then the switches are recorded into the video signal that the Atomos Ninja V will record. This device also has many other features, like for example, you can have a picture-in-picture, as I have that in the screen right there. You can turn it on and off here. You can change its shape with the control software that you have on your computer. And you have many more things, like for example, transitions, which are also possible here. For example, sliding through, dissolving, or dipping to black, and those kind of things. The ATEM Mini itself, however, is basically just all of those features that I have named up to this point. And if you want to do something with this, like for example, go live on YouTube, you would have to use the webcam out and then get the signal onto your computer, for example, into OBS, and then you can live stream that already switched signal with your computer. You can also use another HDMI capture card and, for example, capture the HDMI output and then process that into your OBS or use that directly in Zoom or similar applications. Now, the other versions of the ATEM Mini lineup, like for example the Pro and the Pro ISO, those have additional features. For one, the Pro can already live stream itself. So essentially, if you have the Pro model, you also get a couple of more buttons right there. One of which is that you have a multi-view, which looks like this, where you can actually see all of the different inputs at the same time. And with that, you can know what is currently going on, what is currently going into the program feed, what is currently in the preview, and then also the different sources that you currently have connected to your device. With that also, when you connect the ATEM Mini Pro to a network connection, that one will actually also be able to stream directly to YouTube without needing your computer at all. And then you can also still use the USB-C webcam mode with your computer at the same time as you are also live streaming to the internet. Now, the next step up to the Pro ISO is that the Pro ISO also can record to an SSD. And that is the main reason why now I actually upgraded from this to this. But I think I have to backtrack a little bit. Why did I actually invest into the ATEM Mini when I did? For one, it was relatively inexpensive, something around 250, 260 euros at the time when I purchased it. In combination with the Atomos Ninja V, this would give me the ability to actually have up to 4 HDMI signals and switch live between them while I was making my videos. And that meant that I have my computer hooked up, I have my camera 1, camera 2, and sometimes even, for example, my iPhone connected to this as well. Now, that meant that I basically do my cuts already while I am filming. So I switch between different cameras while I am filming. I see what I am filming on the Atomos Ninja V, and the Atomos Ninja V also records that finished signal. The benefits of this were tremendous. I was no longer having the 30-minute record time limit on any of my devices. I did not have to do an individual screen recording on my computer, which then also led to the fact that this was using less power on my computer, and I could just use the screen recording through the HDMI out onto the ATEM Mini and then to the Atomos Ninja. I was able to do all of this in ProRes, which was much easier to edit on my Intel Mac at the time, and I was able to do all the cuts while I was already doing the video filming, and then later on I just had to take out the segments which I did not want to have anymore. Now this, however, came with one big flaw or struggle that I encountered a couple of times, and that was even despite having a teleprompter where I exactly see what currently goes out the HDMI port of the ATEM Mini, I still managed sometimes to not really notice which camera angle was currently showing and forgot to switch it back to, for example, the main face cam or the camera off to the side, or go from the screen to something that was, for example, the main camera. So I was still kind of limited because I had one video signal. I just was able to switch between the different cameras, and that, for the time, made a lot of sense. Now, however, I got the new M1 Max MacBook Pro, and that one has no problem whatsoever to edit anything like H.264, H.265, ProRes, even Canon RAW files are possible to be edited with this in real time. And so one of the arguments of this setup, ProRes with the Atomos Ninja V, was no longer as applicable as it was before, or at least it wasn't necessarily all that bound to it anymore. Now I was thinking again. I really enjoy when I am able to do my edits and cuts after the fact with a nice multicam sequence. With the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, that gives me this possibility. I also don't want to have any 30-minute record time limits. The ATEM Mini Pro ISO gets rid of that problem because it can record all of the different inputs plus the program feed and all of the audio inputs on top of all of that to a SSD. Then I also don't want to have any problems with having to switch while I am actually recording the video. The ATEM Mini Pro ISO solves that problem because it records all of the inputs individually plus the program output so that I can then edit all of that in a nice multicam sequence. And those two aspects essentially made me switch from the ATEM Mini to the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. The ability to record all of the inputs at the same time with the attached SSD, and then also being able to see myself, as well as not having any 30-minute record time limit. Additionally, I also just invested into this because I found it at a price of around 550 euros, which was just an increase of about 350 euros from this one, and I will probably also be able to sell this for around 200 euros or so. So this was, in my opinion, a smart investment in terms of improving my workflow. Not having to worry about the 30 minutes, not having to worry about which camera is currently active, and having a computer that is able to handle all of those recordings very easily. Now, this all also does not mean that this is the correct setup for you. I have this specific need of wanting to be able to film multiple cameras with my computer screen in my studio without anyone else monitoring my cameras or doing stuff like that. And I currently have the Canon EOS R as an ecosystem, which means that I have that 30-minute record time limit. If I would not have that, let's say, for example, I would have a couple of Sony cameras that don't have the 30-minute record time limit, I would probably not run this exact setup because this is, for the most part, or that's the main limitation, limited to doing only 1080p. Now with the Canon EOS R, I would have a massive crop on all of the 4K footage that I film anyways, and up to recently, when I invested into the M1 Max, I wasn't really able to edit 4K unless it was in 4K ProRes files. that was something that even my Intel machine was able to handle. Now, however, I have the machine that can handle the 1080p multi-track timeline, and so this is a smart investment for me to be able to make more videos faster. Last but not least, why didn't I go for the extreme ISO? It has more features, of course, but it also is much more expensive. The ATEM Mini Pro ISO, to give you a quick idea as to what that would give me, actually has things like Super Source, where that means that you can position 2 different camera angles or even more onto the screen very easily, for example, for interview situations and the like. Additionally, the Extreme ISO also features 2 HDMI ports. It has 2 USB-C ports, so you can use the webcam and do multi-track recording or ISO recordings right at the same time. You have a headphone jack, and of course you also have 8 inputs on this device. However, it also costs 1,300 euros if you want the functionality to be able to record all of the tracks at the same time. And at this time, I wasn't ready to make that investment because most of the other things, since I don't really live stream all that much, were nice to have, but not necessary for my current improvement that I wanted to make. Additionally, I am also considering a switch to 4K and being able to just do that. The Extreme ISO cannot do that at this time. It is also a live streaming device which can only do 1080p, as does the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So with all of that, I was like, maybe it is just time to get the minimal available or the minimal necessary setup that can currently improve my workflow, make things easier, give me the tools I need to produce more videos faster, and that was the ATEM Mini Pro ISO for this specific use case. But now, what can I do with this setup and where are my limitations? Well, I can record all of the different cameras that I have in 1080p into the SSD that is attached to the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. One downside is I cannot use the webcam functionality at the same time. For that, I would either have to use a HDMI capture card and capture the HDMI out, or I would have to use some kind of RTMP local server where I can stream to. However, that comes with significant delays. I also don't have a headphone jack on this device, so I can't monitor my audio, at least not coming out of the device itself. I would have to hook up my headphones, for example, to my monitor that I have right there, the Atomos Ninja V. However, if I don't need the recording, then of course I can use this as a webcam for live streaming, and that is really, really useful. Now, I love to tinker with things like this and improve my workflow over time. All of this did not happen overnight. First, I started out with one camera, and that was everything I had. Then I wanted to improve and have no longer the 30-minute record time limit and have a little bit easier time on my computer, investing into the Atomos Ninja V. Then I wanted to be able to have 2 cameras, but that came with the problem of recording both of them longer for 30 minutes. That was the intention to getting the ATEM Mini. Now improving because now I can record all of them at the same time in the ATEM Mini Pro ISO. So there were steps involved, and all of this spanned over the course of about 3 years. So this is definitely not something that just happened with the snap of a finger. However, I also think that this might not have been the smartest upgrade path overall if I look at what money was invested and what I got out in terms of its feature set. For example, in all of this investing, I probably could have also switched systems to Sony for having no longer the 30-minute record time limit. However, I was really set in stone with the Canon ecosystem because I used that when I was around 18 years old, and there I fell in love with cameras. I switched to Sony, didn't really love the experience, switched back to Canon, and now I don't really want to switch back to Sony just because of the 30-minute record time limit. Additionally, I also might be able to record in 4K at this point if I had made that switch, because of course Sony has more cameras without the 30-minute record time limit and with the ability to record 4K even in full frame, which these 2 cameras don't necessarily do all that well because they have the massive crop. But this is, as of right now, in my opinion, the smartest investment that I can make to improve my workflow, give you knowledge about this device, and maybe over time I will be able to sell off certain upgrades that I made so far, and then eventually reach my goal of being able to shoot, edit, and upload in 4K with multiple cameras without a 30-minute record time limit. For that, I hope you're gonna stay tuned. If you have questions about this whole setup here, then of course you can leave those in the comment section down below, and I will try to answer you there. or make a video specifically about your question. Additionally, if you found this interesting or in some kind of way helpful or inspiring, I would appreciate a thumbs up. I will have links to most of the devices that I mentioned in the description below, so if you want to check those out, you can. And with all that said, I hope you have an amazing day, improve your workflow and your setup, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao!